So let us begin with the labs for today. Today in this session that we are going to have, we will be looking at if loop, for loop, and while loop. So before we go forward with this, there is a need for us to revise what we did last time. So first of all, if we need to write a program to calculate, say for example, area of a rectangle. So what would we need? We will need from the user the length of the rectangle and the breadth of the rectangle. So what I will do is, I will first of all, let me just start my program by declaring a variable a. Now this variable, I need the value from the user. So I will use the function input and I should tell the user that what is expected. So within the input command in inverted commas, I will enter the message that is enter the length of the rectangle. Now, what is going to happen, we need to understand is any value that the user is entering from the keyboard will be initially considered as text by Python. That is why we will now need to convert whatever is coming from the user into an integer. So what I will do is I will first type int, or because length and breadth can also be a decimal number, instead of int, I will use float, and within float, I will paste the entire command. So what is going to happen is when I run the program, so the input command will capture the data from the user, and then that value which is coming would be converted to a decimal number and stored in A. Similarly, I will create one more variable to capture the length. So float input, enter the length of the rectangle. Yeah, I need to correct that. So here instead of length, I will make this breadth of the rectangle. Now, whatever value, so in A, I have the length, and in B, I have the breadth. I need to calculate the area. So I declare a variable capital A, and then I will now write area of a rectangle. We know is length into breadth. So here it will be A multiplied by B. And then finally, by using the print statement, I will write out print the area of the rectangle is, and then I put a comma, and then here I will just value that I need. So the print statement has two parts. The first part of the print statement is the message, that is the area of the rectangle, and the second part after the comma is the variable capital A. So whatever value is coming in A, it will be printed out here. Let us run this program and see here. So the output, I hope all of you can see the output screen. Let me increase the size. So enter the length of the rectangle, say I'm entering it as 10, and enter the breadth of the rectangle, let me enter it as 2. So I get the area of the rectangle is 20, 10 into 2, 20. So now what we will go further is, we will first, before we do, we will now introduce what are comments. See, many lines program that you write will have multiple lines of code. And it is very essential that someone else who is viewing your program should be able to understand what you have written. So to specify what you are writing, we use something called as comments. So Python by default only supports single line comments. So how do I make a comment is I just put a hash sign, and whatever follows the hash sign is a comment. It will never be executed. So I can write this program calculates the area of the rectangle. Now, what if the comment is huge? You know, it goes into 2 lines and 3 lines. Say, for example, a user will need to enter length and breadth. There could be some spelling mistakes. Let me just correct that. LENGTH and breadth. So now what is happening is here, can you see the comment which I initially entered in the first line? It's in somewhat in gray color, but this is in white, and you can see a pink color and, which means Python is considering this as an executable statement. So to make this also comment, I will have to add one more hash. So remember, Python supports only single line comments by default. So if there are multiple lines within the comment, you will have to multiple times you will have to add a hash. But however, there is a workaround. Workaround is this: in case you have multiple line commands, then you can use the string literal. You can use inverted commas thrice, and here after the end you are using inverted comma thrice. What is happening is this is still an executable command, but this is just a string statement. So Python will go through this, but because we are not using it anywhere, Python will simply ignore it off. So we are just using strings as a comment now. So this is for multi-line comments. So now let us introduce ourselves to the if function. So what happens is, many of the time, you know, the path that a particular program should take depend upon the outcome of a particular situation. Say, for example, if I need to write a program which calculate CGPA of a student. And if the CGPA is greater than 9, I need to print excellent. And if the CGPA is less than 9, I would need to say print work harder. So now what should be executed depends upon what the value is, whether the value in CGPA is greater than 9 or less than 9. So for that particular aspect, we can use the if statement. So how do we go forward is, before we start with, we need CGPA from the user. So I will write CGPA variable. I'm declaring the variable CGPA. And what value will it have? The value can be a decimal number, right? 9.5, 8.5. So I am using float, and value I will get it from the user through the input function. And here in input, I will write mention, enter CGPA. So the students enters the CGPA, which is initially text. It will then convert to decimal number by float, and then it will go to the value which is there in CGPA. Now what I'm going to do, if the CGPA which is entered, so this is how I use a key if statement. If CGPA, if it is greater than 9, then my condition is over. CGPA is greater than 9. So because the condition part is over, I put a colon to specify Python that it is done. And then I come to the next line. What I need to do if CGPA is greater than 9, I need to print what? Excellent. What if the CGPA is less than 9? So I will use an else statement. Else. Again, I put a colon and I put a print statement. And here I will now mention work harder. Remember one thing, the else statement is an optional. That is, you need not specify else statement. Let me run this command with only the if statement here. So what is happening here in the terminal, you can see enter CGPA. So I am entering a CGPA of C 8.5. My program has run. I cannot see any output simply because only if CGPA is greater than 9, only then you're printing excellent. If it is less than 9, you need not do anything. You haven't told Python to do anything. That is why you can say nothing. So in such cases wherein, you also want, if the condition is not met, something else is to be executed, then we have the else statement. So I can now print here. So let us run the same program once again. CGPA is 8.5. I can now find the output here is work harder. Let me run this once again. If the CGPA now is say 9.3, I get the output as excellent. Now this is what greater than 9. What if the value entered is exactly 9? If the value entered is exactly 9, still else part will execute work harder. Why? Because the if part, that is the excellent part, will execute only if the value is greater than 9. If it is equal to 9 or if it is less than 9, then work harder will execute. So here you can make modifications. So you can make this as greater than or equal to. Now what are the other types? So this is less than or equal to. If you want to print excellent, if the CGPA is exactly 9, then you can use double equal to. So this is only if CGPA is exactly 9, it will print excellent. For all other cases, greater than 9 or less than 9, it will print work harder. Or what? Let us say if the CGPA is not equal to 9. So this is the symbol that we have, not equal to. So if the CGPA is not equal to 9, then it will print excellent. But if the CGPA is exactly equal to 9, then it will print work harder. So this is how various conditions in the if statement. Now what happens is, initially let us come back. So if the CGPA is greater than or equal to 9, we print excellent. Otherwise, we print work harder. Now, what happens if the CGPA entered is greater than 10? So, for example, here, if I enter 10, let me show my input statement. And when I run, I still get the output as excellent. Why? Because it is greater than 9. The condition is met. It is running excellent. But we know that a CGPA greater than 10 is not possible in our examination pattern. So in such a case, what I will need to do now, I will need to check first of all whether the value that is coming from the user, is it greater than 10 or is it less than 0? Only that if both this, if it is greater than 9 or if it is less than 0, what I will say, the value was incorrect or it is an incorrect input. So I will now modify my program. How I will modify? Let me clear out everything that I have written. So first I will check if CGPA is greater than 10. I will say print. What should I print? The input was wrong or incorrect. This is one. Next, what I will do, else if. So instead of else if, we have the elif statement in Python. So elif, that is, it stands for else if. Elif CGPA is less than 0. I need the same command to execute. That is, print the input was incorrect. So I will just copy it from here, paste it here. What now? After two statements, now CGPA cannot be greater than 10. It cannot be less than 0. It can only be now between 0 and 10. So now I have two conditions, that is LF CGPA is greater than or equal to 9, then print excellent. And lastly, what is the only thing remain? It's the else statement. Else you simply print CGPA, print work harder. I hope this is very clear to you. So what happens is if CGPA is greater than 10, print in the input was incorrect gets executed. If it is less than 0, input was incorrect again gets executed. If it is greater than or equal to 9 now, then excellent will execute. And if it is less than 9 but greater than 0, then work harder will execute. One thing we need to understand is how does Python recognize that a particular, for example, this print statement is of this if statement and not of something else. Or for example, this print statement, the input was incorrect, is of this command, lfcgp less than 0 and not of something else. How does Python recognize that? It simply recognizes by this space indentation that you have. So this gap that you can see, that is how Python recognizes that. So if I just remove this, then this printf statement is not a part of this elif statement and it will result in an error. So by default, when you put a colon here after 0 and you click enter, your compiler will by default assign the necessary spaces. Only if in some cases, you need to have some modifications, then you can have that. So for example, if within this elif statement, say, let me have one more if statement. Within this elif statement, if I say if CGPA, this is just some random I'm writing, say if CGPA is equal to 8, let me print the CGPA was 8. Here what we are telling is this print statement is a part of this if statement. It is not a part of this elif statement. How do I know? Because all statements which are part of this elif will begin by this space. So here the indentation has increased. So this print statement is a part of this if statement. If I remove this print, if I remove that space, now this print statement, this if, and the print above, this print, these are all part of the elif statement that you can have. So we need to be very clear with this indentation. So this is the basic if elif statement. So one thing of what we need to do is the difference between the assignment operator and the comparator operator. What we mean by assignment is whenever I'm saying a is equal to 5, this is an assignment operator. Why assignment? Because the variable a is created, the value 5 is now assigned to the variable which is there on the left. So single equal to is an assignment operator. If I'm using double equal to, this is a comparison operator. Comparison operator where the value 5 is not assigned to a. Here we are checking whether the value in a is equal to 5. So this is the basic difference where you should not go wrong. So mostly in if statements, we are always going to use a comparison operator, right? Because if the value is equal to this, so if we need to check, we use double equal to. Next, what we will now go is we will go forward and we will look at the for statement and we will then look at the while loop. So for loop and while loop here. So let me clear this out. Okay. Before I further go, let me do some operations which are commonly used. So let us say A is equal to 5, B is equal to 3, and let us say C is equal to some values which are doing with A and B. So plus, what does plus do? That is a value of A and value of B are added to each other and stored in C. What does subtract do? Minus the value in B is subtracted from the value in A and stored into C. If we need multiplication, then it's this asterisk sign that we have. So what happens is the value in A is multiplied with the value in B and the resultant is stored in C. And if you need some division, then we have this symbol. So here the value in A is divided by the value in B and the resultant is stored in C. Now here in this particular case, let me just show you what happens is print C. So let me run this command and show you. So what happened is 5 divided by 3, the value is 1.667, which you can see in the output screen. Now we have the double, sign like this. This is this sign. What basically this does is here the quotient part after the remainder, only that is true. So initially when you divide 5 by 3, the value is 1.66. So the portion after the decimal, it is just ignored and only the quotient comes in C. So here now you can see the value is now say 1. If I increase this to 7, so 7 divided by 3, sorry, 7 here, when you divide 7 by 3, the quotient is 2. But what is the actual value of the division? The actual value of division is 2.333. So when I put one more slash sign, so the remainder of the decimal part is removed, truncated, and only you get is the quotient. If you want to find the remainder, then you can use the modulus operator. The modulus operator, what does it do? That is, it divides 7 by 3, and whatever remainder it gets, that will come. So when we divide by 7 by 3, the quotient will be 2 and the remainder will be 1. So now when I run this, I get the remainder as 1. This is the remainder function. Yeah, one is what is if you want to raise something. So we have the double hash trick. Double hash trick here, this is the raise to function. Here, what happens is, this is like a raised to b, a to the power of, and you get the value here in C. So 7 raised to 3 is 343, as you can have. So these are this. Now comparison operators, we had and, we then have or, we have not. So let us say if you want a particular statement, let me come back to the previous program which I had erased. So if CGPA greater than equal to 9, print incorrect input. Here, let me now here instead of if, so now elif, that is else if CGPA is, sorry, so if CGPA is greater than 10, incorrect input. If CGPA less than 0, it is again incorrect input. So this is what we were writing last time. Now remember what is happening. If CGPA is greater than 10, the same incorrect input is, you will get it. The CGPA is less than 0, you will be getting the same output, incorrect input. So in such cases, you can combine them. That is what here, instead of having this both, no, you can take this up here and then write an OR statement and paste. So what happens is, how this runs is, if CGPA is greater than 10 or CGPA less than 0, you just get the incorrect input. Similarly, if there could be cases wherein you need the statement to be executed when both conditions are met. So in such a case, we use the AND operator. Say, for example, I am coming up with a scholarship scheme wherein if a student candidate is a female student and if she has scored 90% more, then only she is eligible for a scholarship. So here there are two conditions. First is the candidate has to be a female. Second, the candidate has to get more than 90%. So here only if both are met. So in such cases, you will use the AND operator. So only if candidate is female and her person is greater than 90, then she's eligible for scholarship. If I make this or, then what is going to happen in that case? So even if the candidate is female, or if the candidate has scored more than 90, then you're going to get a scholarship, which means male candidates who also scores more than 90 will then be eligible and your scheme will not work. So you need to be very careful where you're going to use and when you're going to use for. Now there can be instances, for example, I need to print out a particular statement, say hello 10 times. So when you want a particular code of to be executed multiple times, then we can use the for loop. So here I'm just copying this print hello. So if I want this to print this 10 times, so what I will need to do, I will need to paste this line 10 times, which is time consuming. So for that we use the for loop. So the basic syntax of for loop is for I in range, and then you need to specify how many times. So I can specify say 10. What I do, what I will say, print what the word hello. So remember, there are two loops in Python. Where do we use loops? Whenever a set of lines need to be executed multiple times at the same place, we use loops. We have for loops, we have while loop. When you know with certainty how many times a loop should run, we use for loop. When the loop should run as long as a particular condition remains true, then we use a while loop. So the basic difference between for and while is, for you specify how many times the loop should run, say 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. While you don't specify, you specify a condition. As long as this condition remains true, the loop should get executed. So let me run this and show what happens here. In the output statement, you can see hello. This is printed 10 times. So now we are interested in finding out what is happening in a while. So here after hello, I will put a I. So what I am going to do is, I will print hello. Along with that, I am going to print out whatever value is there in I. So what you can see is, so the first time the code run, you get hello and 0. And the last time the code ran, it is hello and 9. What we understand is the value of I always begins from 0 and it terminates at the specified value -1. There could be cases wherein you want the value of I to begin, say, from 2. In such cases, you will need to specify the start value. So starts value specified as 2 and the end value will always be the specified value minus 1. Let me run this code once again. So you it started from 2 and it went up to 9. Now in all these cases, the value that is there in I is being incremented by 1. Now there could be cases, the value needs to be incremented by 2, by 3. In such cases, you can specify that also. So if I put 2 over here, so what is this? This is the value from which I should start. This is the, wait, let me just remove, yeah. Here 10 that you can see at the center. So 10 minus 1, 9. That is where the value of I will stop. And the steps in which the value of I should go up is by 2. So now let me run this code. So you say 2, 2 plus 2, 4, 4 plus 2, 6, 6 plus 2, 8. 8 plus 2 becomes 10, which is greater than n minus 1. Here in this case, it is greater than 9. That is why it didn't come out. If I make this 3, then now see what happens. So I get 2, 5, 8. So this is how the for loop runs. Remember, the start value is an optional and the increment value that you specify is again an optional. By default, the values are for start it is 0 and for increment it is by default 1. What happens here is I is a variable which Python is using to keep a track of how many times the loop is running. So every time a loop runs, so after the first time the code is executed, then it by default increments the value of I and then it goes for the second run. Then it goes for the next run. That is what happens. So it is not necessary that this is I always. It's a standard programming practice to use I and j, but this can be anything. For example, if I write here for j in range 10, then I can here just instead of make j, I can use any variable. So the code remains unaffected, as you can see. So with this understanding, we will now create a multiplication table for 7. Let's just look at what I want. I want 7 multiplied by 1 is equal to 7. I need 7 multiplied by 2 is equal to 14. I then need 7 multiplied by 3 is equal to 21. So on up till 10. That is 7 into 10 is equal to 70. What you can find from here, I can find that the first part 7 into this is constant. 1, 2, 3 is varying. 7, 14, 21 is varying. Equal to is a constant, which means what I will do is how I am going to do. First of all, print in print now the first part, which is 7 into, because it is a constant part. So I will put it into inverted commas because I just make it as a message. That is a string part. After this, I separate. I now need 1, 2, 3. Where is that 1, 2, 3? That 1, 2, 3 will be in I. So I put I. After that, what equal to should repeat. So because I will therefore put equal to also in inverted commas. And then finally, the value that I'm going to get, because it is a table of 7, so it would be 7 multiplied by I. So first time it would be 7 into 1, second time 7 into 2, third time 7 into 3, and finally, this is my statement. So I need to run this loop 10 times. So I put for I in range 10. Now the problem over here is that initially the value of I will begin with 0. So first time I will get 7 into 0 is equal to 0. I don't want that. So I will specify the starting value as 1. Now again here, the loop will not go up to 10. The loop will terminate at 9 because here we specify the last value plus 1. So here that is why I will go up to 11. Now my condition part is over. To tell Python my condition part is over, I put my colon. And as we had seen in if statement, remember what happens is there has to be an indentation. Only then Python will understand that a particular set of code is a part of the for loop. So let me just bring it down. So after a colon, I press enter. So you can see by default this indentation is there. So now I run this. Here in the output console, you can see the statement 7 into 1 is equal to 7. 7 into 10 is equal to 70. Likewise, now you can modify the program. How? You can ask a user what table he wants. So depending upon what number he enters, you can print. So in that particular case, 7 will not be a fixed part. This would be a fixed part. Here instead of 7, you are going to get I or any value n which is there. So first you will ask user to enter a number, store that value in n, and that n is what we are getting. So if the value is say 5, the user enters 5. So let me just run that. What I will do is I will say declare a variable n. Okay, n is equal to int I need user say input enter a number. Now tables generally are for integer values, right? So this value which is coming from the user, I will convert it to an integer. So I'll put it in. Now what is happening? So assuming the user entered 5, so here it would be 5 into 1 is equal to 5. 5 into 2 is equal to 10. So here I have put n 5 I, and here instead of 7 this is again n. So now when I run this command, so you will be getting option of enter a number. I enter 5, so I get the table for 5. 5 into 1 is 5, 5 into 10 is 50. I run this command once again, say I enter 8, so I get the table for 8. 8 into 1 is 8, 8 into 10 is 80. So this is how we can use the for loop. Now what I would like to do, I would like you all to tell me before we do, we will now go on to while loop, and then we will stop, and then we will give you sufficient time for practice. So while loop mein, the program that we're writing for while loop would be somewhat of this type. So the situation is like this, that we have a police station, and in this police station, there are a number of visitors who have come to meet the inspector. So we have a token system in place. So the receptionist at the police station will assign everybody a token. So when the inspector is ready to meet, what we will tell is, we will say there at the reception counter, there would be a screen. It will specify token 0, go in. After the first person has gone in, met the inspector, then inspector on his computer screen will get a message that shall I send the next person. So if the inspector says yes, then at the output screen, at the receptionist counter, there the number will now come, token number 2 go in. Once he goes in, again, police inspector will get an option whether he wants to meet the next person. If he types yes, then at the receptionist counter, the message will be token number 3 go in. Now what happens is, police station there can be emergencies at any time. So let us say after the third person goes in, and if there is an emergency situation that has come up and the police inspector needs to go outside, so the inspector in such a case will now say, I don't want to meet. So I will, maybe he will type in. So at the reception counter, now it will say, because of an emergency, no more meeting is possible for today. This is what we need. So here what happens is, now we need two variables. First is to keep track of token. Token 0 go in, token 1 go in, token 2 go in. So how many tokens, to keep a track of that token number, we need one variable. Second is, we also need a variable to keep a track of whether the inspector is ready to meet the next person or not. So if the inspector is ready to meet the next person, then the value in that particular variable will be y. If he is not ready to meet, then the value will be n. N stands for no. You might have played various games, right? In various games, they might ask you, press Y to continue, press N to stop. So somewhat of that sort we will use over here. So here, first of all, let me create a variable token. So this variable token, initial value is 1. Here, this is to specify, to keep a track of token. Next is to keep a choice or keep a track of the inspector's choice. I will create a variable choice, and the value which is there in choice, because it is a text, I will keep the value to be capital Y. It is text, that is why I'm putting it in inverted commas. Now what I will do, I will start my while loop. In while loop, that is, what is a condition? Till what time the loop should run? The loop should run as long as the inspector is ready to meet, which means while the value which is there in choice, 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 double equal to, we need to compare. So as long as the value in choice remains Y. Now what happens if the inspector, if instead of pressing capital Y, he enters a small y, then your program will terminate. So as long as the value in choice is equal to capital Y, or it is equal to small y, then these are the steps that I need to execute. What are the steps? So first of all, I will print out the statement. Print token number, token go in. So token number is the fixed input statement, fixed part. The values of token will be the actual value which is there in token. It will keep on changing, and then go in. It's again a fixed part. Next part is next. So after the first person has gone in, what I will do now, in a while loop, remember the values are not automatically increased. So I will now need to increase the value. So I will now say token is equal to the new value in token will be equal to the old value in token plus 1. Next, what I will do is, so assuming the first person has gone in, so now there will be a message on the inspector screen. So here the value, so I will say inspector screen. So I need input. I need this value. Message is press Y to continue or any other key to exit. This is what we are planning to do. Press Y to continue or any other key to exit. So this is something that the inspector is going to enter. this value, where should this be stored? This value should be stored in the variable choice. So here I will now put choice is equal to. I am not going to use int or float because the value should remain in text. So what now is next is so yeah, so this is done. And then when see what happens is initially the value in choice is y. So we are now assuming that the first person, the inspector, is always going to make. So when the program begins to run from line 4, so it will check whether the value in choice is it equal to capital Y or small y. If it is met, then we go to line 5. So token number 1 go in, then we are incrementing the value of token, and then here you inspector will have an option whether he wishes to meet the next person or not. So if he presses Y, what happens is then again from line 4 the loop will continue. So now what is here already previously incremented the value of token. So here you get the print statement token number 2 go in, and then this keeps on continuing. Let us say after some instances the user or the inspector presses some other key which is not Y. In such a case the value in choice will not be equal to Y. So here this condition will not be met and your loop will terminate and you will come outside. So when you come outside, so I will print the statement, sorry, because of emergency, no more meet is possible. Let me just correct my statements. See, yeah, because of emergency. Let us run the statement code and see whether it works fine. So initially we are assuming that first person always goes in. So that is why token number 1 go in. Press Y to continue or any other key to exit. I wish to continue, so I type Y. So token number 2 go in. Press Y to continue or any other key to exit. I wish to continue, so I type Y. Token number 3 go in. Press Y to continue any other key to exit. I don't wish to continue, so I press something else. So I get this option. Sorry, because of emergency, no more meet is possible. So some spelling mistakes I wanted to correct here. And after the input statement, I would put a colon and a space. Let me run this command once again. Yeah, so press Y to continue. Any other key to exit? Yes, I wish to continue. So token number 2 go in. Press Y to continue or any other key to exit. I don't wish to meet anybody, so I press any other key. So in this, I press D. So now I get sorry because of an emergency, no more meet is possible. So with this, we have discussed for if statements, for statement, while loop statement. Based on this, we have 5 practice problems which you need to do. The first program which is based on the if statement is you need to create a BMI calculator, and depending upon what the BMI value is, you need to print out an appropriate message. The second, third, and the fourth programs are based on for loop. One is to print a multiplication table, which I have demonstrated. The next is to calculate the factorial of a number, and then also to add the sum of first n integers. So for example, if the value entered is 5, then you need to calculate the factorial of 5. The next program is to calculate the sum of first n integers. So if the user enters a value, say 10, then what would be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 up to 10? You need to do that. You are not allowed to use any ready-made formulas. You know, the sum of first n integers is n into n plus 1 by 2. So you should not be using that. You should be using a for loop to do this particular aspect. And the last program would basically be to demonstrate this function of demonstrate the while loop application. So with this, let me just stop my recording so that this is available.